Hello, and welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything in the table in the world of sports. And March is a special time for college basketball teams around the nation. It brings a wide range of emotions to the table, whether it be absolute jubilation or just the deepest of disappointments. And in this episode, we're going to once again feature both ends of the spectrum with Purdue basketball as once again a season ending loss in the March Madness tournament. So, Tim, are you ready to cover it?
Let's run it. What else is there to it?
It's a good point. Purdue was absolutely stunned by 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. They became the second 16 seed to upset a 1 seed in the first round, joining UMBC in 2018 over that historic victory against Virginia. Fairleigh Dickinson had to win their first 4 game to reach the first round. And at the onset, I didn't think this was a possibility. Tim, you didn't think this was a possibility. Nobody thought this was a possibility.
You can always think that it's a possibility, but it's how seriously do you think of it is the real question.
The stupid thing about Fairleigh Dickinson's situation is that they made the tournament off of a technicality.
Yeah.
And
They
I just
shouldn't
want to
even
preface
have
that
technically been in the tournament.
right away. They shouldn't even technically been there. Merrimack won the NEC, but because of some stupid antiquated rule where new
Yeah.
Division I teams have a
Regardless of
4 year
whether
transition
Purdue
period,
won or lost this game, I think that's a very pointless rule.
it's a pointless rule. It stopped Merrimack from entering the tournament this year. It stopped Bellarmine from entering the tournament last year. Just get rid of it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about these two teams, of course, starting with Fairleigh Dickinson. Tobin Anderson put on an absolute coaching masterclass. To say after the first 4 game, the more I watch Purdue, the more I think we can beat them is one thing. But
That was
to
bold.
go out and execute and back it up and actually win, that just makes that quote after the Texas Southern win an all-time quote because
Executed for all 40 minutes too.
they
Start to finish.
absolutely backed it up. Well, more specifically, you in the Purdue Boom Bust or Believable, you talked about a Boilermaker blueprint, and that was over a month ago, where if you press Purdue's offense in
High
the full
intensity ball
court,
pressure,
yep,
force them to shoot threes, and
mm-hmm,
make it difficult to get the ball into Zach Edey.
that's
That's what
right,
they do.
and you are able to beat Purdue, and that's exactly
Yeah.
what the Knights did. They swarmed Zach Edey when they tried to get it into him, and then Zach Edey had to kick it out and force Purdue to shoot threes, which they cannot do. They cannot do
Yeah.
that. And then they kept up the ball pressure in a full court press the entire game. It was a masterful performance by Fairleigh Dickinson, and by all means, they earned this victory.
Absolutely. Like taking a look at the game, like the biggest takeaway. One of my friends texted me right after. It's like, what are your initial thoughts? And all I could say is that they deserve to win that game. You talk about the game plan. They executed it perfectly in terms of, Purdue went on their runs. Don't get me wrong. They had like an 11-0 run. They had like an 8-0 run somewhere. But every time Purdue went on a run, they shot right back. And they would go on a 6-0, 7-0, 10-0 run of their own and keep themselves right in the game. And you know what happens when you just let teams stay in the game. And overall, they knew that Zach Edey was going to get his, and even with as difficult as life, they made his life in the paint.
Right, Zach Edey still
like
got
his 20
his.
points. Yeah,
21 and 15, which
yeah, but
that's
but
Zach
once
Edey
again,
for you.
yeah, but once again, their mantra for the game: we're going to make someone else beat us. Zach Edey scoring 21 points is not going to beat a team. You have to have other contributions, and that's where Purdue just fell completely short throughout the whole season. I think that one of the weirdest and craziest things for me is, and it's something that they have to look at, a lot going into next year. Because you'd look at this team, like this team is going to return almost all of their players. And depending on even on the attention that Zach Edey gets, he very well may return, because obviously we've seen how his model of player doesn't transition well to the NBA, so he might not get much attention there. But regardless, almost all of these guys are returning. How are they going to get these guys that are pretty much all very capable shooters? How are we going to get them comfortable shooting consistently in game? Because for like this entire second half of the season, for the entire whole season, really, I mean, they looked a lot better in the beginning of the season, but the whole season, they struggled with 3-point shooting. And lately, it was like, yeah, other guys can, do pretty decent, but Fletcher Loyer was in a massive slump. And then this game, Loyer was the only one who seemed like he could make anything. The rest of the guys were completely discombobulated, out of sorts. I mean, Mason Gillis had a wide open air ball during the game. I mean, talk about getting in guys' heads. They lived rent free in Purdue's heads in the second half because of their defensive style of we believe that you don't believe in yourself to make this shot, so we're going to beg you to do it. And half the time they didn't. You saw multiple guys pass up on 3-point opportunities, and there was times where they did take them and they were way off. They were scared to shoot.
Yeah, Tim, you look at some of these shooters, and what stands out to me for Purdue is that they're a very young team. Like this is a young
there's
squad.
Still so much room to improve. Obviously, we all know like we know like the expectations into this year were so low, and I think that was a big reason why everyone, at least in my opinion, started hating on them as time went on and as they got good, because all of us that were along for the ride were like, hey, this is super cool, this is great, everybody
right, it's awesome, like they're winning, like this was not the expectation. They didn't even start in the AP top 25 ranked, and they climbed up to number 1 and they held serve. But you still have these group of guys that you have to mesh, you have to mold. What is Matt Painter going to do with this squad? Because you have guys like Fletcher Loyer, Braden Smith, they're both freshmen.
That's what you have to figure out. Like these guys are the guys that are now at the helm of your program, and how are we going to mesh those guys into consistent solid players, because they all have the ceiling. You talk about Mason Gillis's massive performance this year. Brandon Newman has had great performances in the past years, and even a couple this year. Like they all have the capability, but to put it together is one thing, because that has been what Purdue has been unable to do. They're fantastic in the regular season, but come postseason, the pieces don't seem to fit together outside of Big Ten play.
Yeah,
and that's what has been their downfall.
Yeah, and that's something that I really want to hit on, is that more March disappointment. You go from 2021, you lose in overtime to North Texas, you lose to a 13 seed. You come back the next year, you make it to the Sweet 16, but you run into a 15 seed in St. Peter's and you lose. Now, as a 1 seed, this was probably the best opportunity when you thought that this is going to be a rebuilding year, and then you just run right flat and face plant against a Fairleigh Dickinson team that in all measures maybe probably shouldn't even have been there, but they're here, and on any given day, I'm giving them credit. They deserve all the credit in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I am saying from like a purely analytical, like rule standpoint, like they didn't even win that conference tournament. So like
I will say though, like looking at this game, obviously, like no, could have never predicted this outcome, or let me say this, I refuse to predict this outcome, because that would be picking against my own team. But going into this game,
I refuse to pick this outcome because I didn't expect it. Are you nuts?
Out of any 16 seed, out of any 15 seed, the one thing I looked at is this was on paper, and you look at like conflicting styles, this was the worst possible matchup for Purdue to come to face with, and it came to fruition.
I don't think I've ever seen a team take their disadvantage and turn it into an advantage. That is a small team. Like the statistics.
The smallest in Division I. The smallest.
The smallest in college basketball.
Their average height on their squad is 6'1" average.
That is as tall as you and I, which is crazy. Like I saw the statistic. The center
6'6".
was 6'6", 219 pounds. Zach Edey is 7'4", 305. 9 out of the 13 guys on Fairleigh Dickinson's roster is a foot shorter or more than Zach Edey.
And
That's insane.
some of them like damn near, 2/3 of his weight.
And to take that small ball mentality, that super duper small ball mentality, and flip it on its head and use it to your advantage is an absolute coaching masterclass.
Yes, and here's the thing. First of all, in my opinion, there's two big things that, I mean, you can ignore the turnovers, you can ignore whatever that Purdue didn't do that well.
Judge Fairleigh Dickinson by their size, do you?
Not even. The two things that caused this outcome, in my opinion, is, first of all, their ability to do what other teams attempted to do but failed in terms of getting Zach Edey out of the paint and actually exposing that. They legitimately did a good job of exposing that. And a big part of that was Sean Moore. Sean Moore was a season 27% three-point shooter, and he hit multiple today in very, very key moments.
Sean Moore went 3 for 10, 30%, but he made them when it counted. And Sean Moore led the way, 18 points. Like almost half of his field goals came off of threes. But Zach Edey looked like a lost puppy on the perimeter.
Yeah, but the other thing that they did,
clue what he was doing.
But the other thing that they did is they saw what St. Peter's did with Zach Edey last year, and it was defending by committee. We're going to sink everybody down. And part of that, I do kind of believe, is how Purdue runs their offense. Purdue does run offense a lot of time in man-to-man that puts one guy or a couple guys sort of in a little bit towards the paint at times, which allowed them to be halfway in between man and Zach Edey and block those passing lanes. And they did a really, really good job of that, where they had almost like 3 guys on them at every given time. You have a guy fronting, you have a guy in backside help, so Purdue can't feasibly go over the top. Zach Edey, he was calling for that over the top all game long because he has him sealed on the front side. But what he can't see is that they've got at least one guy on the backside just sitting there waiting. But the thing is, they can do that because Purdue could not make a 3 to save their life.
Absolutely. That's the way you beat that crash the paint, kick it out, make threes. And it happened in the Indiana game at Westlaw, where they tried to shoot threes and they couldn't. Purdue shot a whopping 19% from 3 against Fairleigh Dickinson.
We've seen that
5 for 26. That will not win you games. We can rant, we can rave about the game plan, how FDU prepared, how Purdue wasn't able to execute. But I think what we need to talk about is, where do we go from here? What does Purdue do? Because I have no doubt that they're going to make the adjustments. And if you look historically, the last 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed the next year won the national championship. So that's just something to put out there. But like, what do we do? Like, I heard the fire Matt Painter cries, which that's not the answer. Matt Painter is a fantastic coach. That is not the solution. Just a knee-jerk reaction. Yeah, it's just a knee-jerk reaction and frustration to coming up short. But something will have to change.
Yes, in my opinion, here's the thing. There's obviously a lot of calls in terms of Matt Painter's, like coaching and whatnot. And, maybe it's not enough for the big stage. Matt Painter can only do so much. His players have to execute. And today, I don't think it was a game plan issue. The players simply did not execute anything worth a damn. Because here's the thing, like, I've seen post-game press conferences, I've seen pre-game press conferences for a bunch of these games recently. So many questions about press break. Have you guys worked on the press break? Are you guys going to be able to break the press? And every time they talk about, we worked on it. Did it look like they worked on a press break? I don't know. To me, it didn't. But once again, I guarantee you they did stuff for it. But the players have to be able to execute that.
Yeah,
and that's the issue.
That's the thing.
You can only blame the coach so much. And I'm not saying that the players are like it's your guys' fault. But at the end of the day, they are the ones that have to make the plays. And they didn't today, and they'll learn from it. I'm sure of that. And I'm sure that this team will still be a very, very good team next year. I don't know, with Zach Edey, without Zach Edey, no one knows exactly what their ceiling may be, but I'm sure that they will be a very solid team next year because they've also got a couple of solid freshmen coming in once again. But the question is, yeah, what do you take from a loss like this, from an embarrassment like this? Because becoming, once again, 2 years in a row, the wrong side of history. What do you take from that? What are these guys going to take from that moving forward? Because that is what's going to define, not only how this team shows up next year, but each of their individual, their confidence, their careers. They have to learn stuff from the embarrassing, demoralizing losses like this. So it'll be very interesting to see how they react. And this team is going to be under all the flack and all the pressure next year, as is every team that has, a massive loss like this. I'm sure Virginia was when they came back that next year. And what did they do? They proved everybody wrong. But that's what they'll have to try to do.
What more can I say other than that? I think you said everything that needs to be said, and I think this is a good point to wrap up this
Can we
video.
stop making this video like an
Yeah.
annual thing? I kind of
Yeah,
don't want to do these anymore.
this is the second straight year we're doing this, and once is okay. Two,
Once
no.
is not okay. Two is very much not okay. Three times, I'm probably going to just
The third time, make it stop. But
please.
that's all we got. Another year of Purdue basketball is in the books. We'll see how this team is able to respond and retaliate and come back next year. But we
Will
have
Zach
so
Edey
much.
return?
Will Zach Edey return?
Tune in next time.
That is a $1 million question for Purdue. But we have so much more college basketball content. We have been covering the tournament, and we're going to continue to cover the tournament the rest of the way. So if you didn't catch our first round predictions, do that. We're going to be having second round predictions coming up right now.
Rain keeps rolling if the Boilermakers are on it or not.
Absolutely. But if you want more from us, like and subscribe. And until next time, we out.
I don't know how much more of this I can do, man.